Suffer the little children to come unto me for the lollipop. All right, let's see. What's happening? I had this set up there. There it goes. That's not it. Well, okay. It looks different to me. I'm sorry. Well, we're continuing our study in Mark. We're in Mark chapter 9. I've titled this Jesus' Unlimited Patience. How many of us need Jesus' unlimited patience? Have you seen this video? It's just 30 seconds long. You don't really need the sound, but that sheep is down there bleating and crying. And so he got pulled out by the shepherd. Now, how many of us does that describe? Right? It's just so funny. A shepherd needs to have patience. Well, Jesus has unlimited patience. And so here we're in a story. It's actually the story of the man who brought his son to Jesus to be healed because he had, some kind of spirit that was sort of epileptic. It threw him into the fire or the water. And you say, well, I didn't know that story was about patience. The guy says, Lord, I believe, help me overcome my unbelief. So it's about belief and all of that. And it's true. That's all great stuff. But when you just sit and mull, anybody ever mull on Scripture? Ruminate on Scripture? Sit there and just let it set in. And sometimes you might see a little more. So there's a great story about healing. That's true, and all of that. But there's more. There's a word in Psalm. Blessed is the one who does not walk in the step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers. But blessed is the one whose delight is in the Lord, and what? On his law, who meditates on his law day and night. I was quoting the King James there. There's something to just meditating on the Word. And the more we study the Gospel of Mark, I hope you've enjoyed the study, but the more we study it, the more I'm just learning more and more about these disciples and Jesus' relationship with them. And we've been talking about them, how, Jesus invited them on a master class. That's what we've been looking at. And he's been trying to teach them about the kingdom, but they're sort of like that sheep. And a little hard-headed, and he gave him a midterm, and we saw he asked the question, who do you say I am? And basically Peter got a grade of what? Anybody remember? He got a grade of Satan. Yeah, F. But his grade was Satan. You just can't do worse than that, right? And so we've been watching this go on, and so here we are. Last week we were at the Transfiguration. Here we are with Jesus and his disciples, and the way I want to approach the story is I want to read the text. We're going to read that in a minute, and then I want to just look at the four main sort of characters in the text. And so the teachers of the law are there. There's the epileptic son, or the son with the spirit that makes him do that. The Bible uses different words for these kinds of things that happen. Sometimes they say he had a spirit that made him do that, or the dad describes it that way. Or some will say, there's an unclean spirit. Sometimes things are called an evil spirit, and sometimes right out called demon did it. And it just uses different words. I don't know the difference. I'm not an expert in trying to figure out what they thought about all this stuff. So I just called him the epileptic son because I look at that and I said, that's what it looks like that we might relate to, right? The distraught father, I want to talk about him. But mostly, then I want to talk about the disciples, and because I see myself in them. You might see myself in them too, or maybe yourself. So let's read the text. And then we'll just try to get into the story enough to see maybe more of what's going on. It says, and when Jesus came to the disciples, they saw a great crowd around them, and the scribes arguing with them. And immediately all the crowd, when they saw him, were greatly amazed and ran up to him and greeted him. And he asked them, "What are you arguing about with them?" And someone from the crowd answered him, "Teacher, I brought my son to you, for he has a spirit that makes him mute. And whenever it seizes him, it throws him down, and he foams and grinds his teeth and becomes rigid. So I asked your disciples to cast it out, and they were not able." And he answered them, "O faithless generation, how long am I to be with you? How long am I to bear with you? Bring him to me." And they brought the boy to him, and when the spirit saw him, immediately it convulsed the boy, and he fell on the ground and rolled about, foaming at the mouth. And Jesus asked his father, "How long has this been happening to him?" And he said, "From childhood. And it has often cast him into the fire and into the water to destroy him. But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us." And Jesus said, "If you can, all things are possible for one who believes." Immediately the father of the child cried out and said, "I believe, help my unbelief." And when Jesus saw that a crowd came running together, he rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, "You mute, deaf spirit, I command you, come out of him and never enter him again." And after crying out and convulsing him terribly, it came out. And the boy was like a corpse, so that most said to them, "He's dead." But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up, and he arose. And when he entered the house, his disciples asked him privately, "Why could we not cast it out?" And he said to them, "This kind can only be driven out cannot be driven out by anything but prayer." So these are the four, I say teachers of the law, they're called scribes, but interchangeable. These are the ones who not only transcribed the law, but they were teachers of it because they knew it better than anybody. And so these are the four groups I want to talk about. But let's talk about them first, the teachers of the law, and really the religious leaders, the religious establishment. My first question when I looked at the story is like, what in the world are these guys doing in Caesarea Philippi? Remember what we talked about last couple of weeks about Caesarea Philippi? This was not a good Jewish place. This was the center, the local center of paganism. This is where temples were and all the stuff that goes with them, and a lot of it's not that good. This is the stuff that the Jews hated most about the Gentiles. And this is the center of celebrating all that stuff. What are these guys doing there? Well, as we've been going through the Gospel of Mark, we've seen these guys show up everywhere, haven't we? You remember Jesus first, and we've kind of been going over it, so maybe repetition is the key to learning, right? But first thing, in the beginning, when Jesus healed the leper, that's kind of the trigger here. He healed the leper by doing what? He touched him. And we know that's not allowed. That's breaking the rules. So here we have this notable rabbi that everybody's talking about, and the religious establishment in Jerusalem's hearing that he's breaking the rules. They don't care that he's healing lepers. They care that he's breaking the rules. So they show up at the next thing. And so Jesus is in a house and he's trying to teach, and the guys show up, they tear up the roof and they lower the guy down. And there they are. Jesus said, "You're forgiven." And they start arguing with him. Calling him a blasphemer. There they are. And then when Jesus calls a tax collector to be a disciple and has dinner with them and all their friends, eating with tax collectors and sinners, there they are. "Hey, you guys aren't washing your hands right, and what are you doing hanging out with those tax collectors and sinners, and why aren't you fasting like the rest of us? Instead, you're feasting with these icky people." There they are, arguing with Jesus. And then when Jesus heals a man with a withered hand on the Sabbath, and his disciples are plucking grain, they're telling everybody, "This guy's preaching for Satan. Stay away from this guy." And they argue with him some more. And then when Jesus goes on this, well, before he even takes his disciples up to the woman of Zarephath area there, they come to him and they say, how come you don't follow all the purity laws? How come you're not following the cleanliness laws? And he says, you're getting mad at me about your traditions, but you guys break the Ten Commandments. Just arguing with him about everything. Then he goes on this whole Gentile route. He brings his disciples up there to help that woman. They go all the way down along the Decapolis where all the Gentiles are, and they're helping people and healing and feeding and doing all this stuff. And then they come to him again. And they say, show us a sign. Show us that you're allowed to do this because we think you're not doing it right. And then Jesus takes them up into Caesarea Philippi. And then here they are again. So all these guys want to do is they want to find a reason to discredit Jesus' ministry. They want to have a reason to go back to Jerusalem and say, yeah, we know he's a false teacher. We know he's doing wrongly. And we've already been told that they have already begun to conspire to do what? To kill him. That's how antagonistic, that's how angry, that's how against Jesus they are. They're just looking for a way to call him a fraud. And it's unfortunate, but the disciples are going to give him one. It's unfortunate about this, what's happening here. So these guys are just chasing him down everywhere they go. They're going to try to discredit him, and they show up here in Caesarea Philippi, and lucky for them, there's a man who needs help, and he brings his son to the disciples. How many disciples? 9. Who said 9? There's only 9 because the other 3 are with Jesus on the mountain. Brings them to the 9 disciples, and none of them can help. And so these guys are there, and when Jesus comes down, they're all arguing with the disciples. What do you think they're arguing about? These religious leaders. Aha! I knew you guys were frauds. Everybody was saying these guys that go around healing people with evil spirits, but they're frauds. Yeah, they gave them exactly what they were looking for. They failed to help the guy. So that's the religious establishment. They're on scene, and now they've caused a big argument and a big row, and they got what they came for. Jesus' ministry is a fraud, and his disciples are a fraud. Now let's look at this son. Now, this is horrible. Jesus asked the dad, how long has he been like this? He says, since he was a child. So he's not a child anymore. He's more of an adult. But his life is wrecked. Think about this guy's life. Jesus had compassion. Like, how long has it been like this? Something strikes him, some spirit, it said, strikes him, and he can't talk, and he can't hear, and he freezes up, and he throws himself down, and if there's a fire, he might be thrown in the fire. If there's water, he might fall in the water. What would your life be like if it was like that? How easy would it be to have a marriage, or have a job, or to be a parent, or all that stuff you got to do to have a life? If that happened at any given time. This guy's life was completely, crashed. It was not the life abundant that God wants people to have. Now, I've said this before when we dealt with the demoniac of Gerasene. I don't know anybody with that. And I mean specifically with something you would be described as a spirit that would cause that to happen. Whatever that means, I don't know anybody like that. I didn't know anybody like the guy who had a legion of demons. I don't know anybody like that. So, yeah, Jesus has the power. He has the muscle to take care of that and to heal that guy's life and heal this guy's life. And that's awesome. Jesus can do that. But I don't know anybody like that. But I know lots of people who are experiencing similar circumstances in their life. Do you? You ever know anybody whose life just completely crashed and frozen, not because of some other kind of thing jumping in and making them, broken, but really just the ongoing bad choices, like being pulled out of a ditch and jumping back into it every time? Anybody know anyone like that? Whose life, just because of choice after choice after choice, has just, they say, they say in movies, but I think they say in AA too, if you want to get out of the pit, what should you do? Put down the shovel. Stop digging. Because we just, when we're on that track, we just bring our lives to the point where they're just frozen. And they're ineffective and they're unproductive and there's no life in them. And here's the great thing. Jesus has the power to fix that. If he can fix this, he can fix that. And he really does. We've heard testimonies. I have my own testimony. I've heard them all my life. At least since I was 20. Jesus, he can restore life. It doesn't matter how far down we think we are. He can restore it. I love that Amy Grant song back in the 80s or whatever it was. Ask Me How I Know. Do you ever listen to Amy Grant? Ask Me How I Know. And basically her thing is, his mercy is bringing me back to life. I love it. So this guy's life is jacked up. A lot of people's lives are jacked up. Jesus can heal it. That's great. That's a great part of the story. How did I get back to that? I don't know. What happened? There's an evil spirit in my iPad today. Oh, it went backwards. Okay, now we're going forward. Oh, this strong father, I use the same picture because the guy's in this too. This guy, this is the guy who's kind of famous for, Lord, I believe, help me overcome my unbelief. I'm going to tell you, I feel bad for this guy. Just imagine you're in this guy's shoes, and I'm kind of feeling like that woman. Remember the woman a few chapters ago who had an issue of bleeding for 12 years? And she had spent everything she had trying to get help. Think about how many times she got her hopes up. Can you be there with her for a minute? I think this guy's probably the same thing. I think he probably did. Don't you think that he would have done everything that was ever presented possible to get his help for his son? Wouldn't he have done that? Even right here, we're in Caesarea Philippi. We're in a Gentile area, a pagan area. This guy's probably one of those Gentiles. It doesn't seem like he would be a Jew who would have carried his son from way down where Jesus is always at and drug him all the way up here. This guy seems to be from the area. And so here's this guy who's a Gentile who knows that these Jewish people don't like them, who knows Jewish rabbis don't like them and think they're unclean and don't want to get near them and think God's going to come and beat them up. He knows all that. But it doesn't stop him. He's heard that Jesus has been helping people and even helping Gentiles. And so this guy has faith. He does have faith. And so he brings his son to Jesus. But Jesus is not there. His disciples are, 9 of them. I feel for this guy. These 9, they had cast out spirits before and had success. A few chapters back, they were they were sent out and they cast out demons. They came back just praising God for how even the demons obeyed them. Anybody remember that? They had all this victory. And this guy might have heard about that too. And yay, they can do it. Everybody says they can do it. And he brings his son. And 9 of them, I don't know, I'm thinking every single one of them gave it a shot. Because I think I know something about the mentality in these guys that we'll see. But I think they all gave it a shot. Move over, let me try. Do you guys ever do that? I can do it. Maybe 9 times this guy trying to get his hopes up. And they fail him. And so when Jesus comes down, is it any wonder, Jesus, he tells him, if you can do anything, have pity on us. And Jesus says, if I can, anything's possible to those who believe. And the guy says, Lord, I believe, help me overcome my unbelief. Help me. That's like a prayer, isn't it? Help me. Help me overcome my unbelief. When people, maybe we do it to ourselves, but people do it, I think, as well. When we're really struggling, I look back over my life, I can see how God has been faithful to me all my life. It's easy. I've walked with him for now 40 years, and he's been so faithful. It's easy when I look back. But sometimes in the right now, it's not as easy. Sometimes the right now is just so pressing and so real, and it's like, I don't see the way out of this right now. And so I find myself that I can be in this place of, I believe, help me overcome my unbelief. A place of doubt. And sometimes when we're doubting, somebody might say, well, just trust in Jesus. Well, I know those words. I tell myself too, but right now it's hard. When things aren't going the way we want, when things are crashing down and we're getting the bad news, and it's hard. And people sometimes look at doubt and they're like, well, you're just not being faithful. You just need to trust God. And that may make us feel guilty that we're not more faithful, that we're not more trusting. We may even get down on ourselves like, well, I know I just got to trust God. But I'm having a problem right now. And I want to say, that's okay. That's the human experience. It's what we do. We walk by faith, not by sight. It's not 100%. If it was 100%, that would be sight. Oh, I just know it's always going to be okay all the time. I mean, I probably live that way more than a lot of people. But still, it's not always that way. I have my share of, Lord, I believe, but help me overcome my unbelief. But what I want you to see is, what does Jesus do? How does Jesus respond to, help me overcome my unbelief? Ah, you big jerk. You should believe more. What do I got to do to make you believe more? Of course, he says something like that. We're going to look at that. But that's not his response to this guy when he says, help me overcome my unbelief. What does Jesus do? How does Jesus answer that prayer? He heals the son, doesn't he? The guy's saying, can you heal my son? Can you have pity on me? Can you heal my son if you can? And Jesus says, well, if you believe, anything's possible. He said, well, I believe you can heal my son, but I don't believe you can heal my son. Right? Isn't that what he said? I mean, because I keep bringing my kid somewhere, but nobody does. They keep bringing my hopes up, and I just can't stand the heartache. I believe you can heal my son, but I don't believe you can heal my son. Can you help me overcome this don't believe? And he heals his son. Let me ask you this. When this guy walks away with his son, all healed, able to speak, no longer trapped by this paralytic thing or whatever it is, when he's walking away, what's this guy's current state of belief about whether Jesus can heal his son? He's pretty confident now, isn't he? What happened to the unbelief? It's gone. So what's Jesus doing when we're like, Lord, I'm trying to trust you, but I'm really having a struggle right now. Help me. What's he doing? We need to see that's what he's doing. He's not judging us. He's not mad at us. He doesn't want to, toss us out of class. He's going to answer that prayer. I'm going to do whatever it takes to help you overcome that unbelief. That's what we see going on in this story. But I do want to get over to talking about the disciples here, because this is what we think about when we think about these disciples. I think we think about, these, disciples are these guys, right? They're just these nice, youngins following Jesus, trying the best they can. They're not perfect, but, they're doing their best, and they're just like us, and they're like Linus, right? But what do they really look like? Who's in the next slide? Could be Charlie Brown. But no, I like Charlie Brown, so I'm not doing that. This is what they really look like. I'm serious. We don't think of the disciples as we're going through the story, and I said this when we started the master class. We don't think of these disciples like this, all jacked up. We don't think of them as Pigpen. We think they're these Linus guys who are just going along and they, they're with Jesus now, and they're like good, and they're like doing it all right, the best they can. They're not perfect, but they're really good. That's not what Mark is telling us. That's not what I'm seeing in Mark. I'm seeing a huge mess. And especially in this story. Look at this. This is what Jesus, he's talking to the man. And the man says, well, I asked your disciples to cast it out, but they weren't able to. And then Jesus says this, O faithless generation, how long am I to be with you? How long am I going to bear with you? And that guy's like, Me. Right? Like, this guy, faithless? This is the only one showing faith in the whole story. Faithless? Why would Jesus say that to him? This reminds me of a couple chapters ago when we were going through the Gentile regions on the other side of the Sea of Galilee, and we came to the blind man, the deaf man with the mute and deaf. And you remembered when they had heard about Jesus, so they bring in their friend to Jesus, and everybody's excited because the demoniac was healed, so they believe Jesus is going to heal this guy. Hey, this Jewish rabbi, he actually likes us Gentiles. And so they bring their friend, and they're all excited because Jesus can heal him, and they get to Jesus. And Jesus, if you remember, it says when he went to heal him, he sighed heavily. Do you remember that? And we had to ask, what? And the word there means like exacerbated, frustrated. And we're like, what did this guy do? He had heard about Jesus. They all were happily bringing their friend to Jesus. And all of a sudden, Jesus is like sighing, like, oh my goodness, how long am I putting up with you guys? And we had to ask ourselves, who in the world is he talking to when he's sighing like that? Who's it meant for? And then we might also think, you remember just after that, he heals a blind man. But he does it in 2 stages. And we know he wasn't tired, he wasn't having a bad day, right? He had a good breakfast that morning. It's none of that. We know why he did it. Because immediately he asked the disciples, well, who do you think I am? And they're like, you're the Messiah. And he tells them about Messiah. And then Peter's like, oh, no, Jesus, that's not what's going to. Peter's rebuking Jesus. And that's when he got the grade of Satan. Because the disciples could see he's the Messiah, but they had no idea what Messiah meant. And so the whole thing about healing this guy, in that, Jesus is teaching his disciples, putting his fingers in the guy's ears and sighing heavily. It's for the disciples. When Jesus is with the woman who's just like the Elijah woman of Zarephath up there, and he's saying, well, I thought I was only for the house of Israel. Or he's saying, that's not good to give the children's bread to the dogs. Who's he saying it for? Of course, he's testing a woman's faith, but he's repeating back to the disciples what they wrongly believe. All along, this is for the disciples. They're supposed to hear Jesus is trying to get through their thick skulls what the Messiah is really about, what the kingdom's really about. And so, same is true here. He's not talking to this guy, this poor guy. This guy's been through it. But he still had the courage to ask Jesus for help. Who is the faithless generation? Well, I would include these religious teachers. They're there too. And I'd include them. Because they're following him around trying to discredit him. But clearly these disciples. Let's just as the disciples, after this whole debacle, right, this whole show. Remember, Jesus comes down off the mountain with Peter, James, and John. And there's 9 disciples down there arguing with everybody, making a big scene. If anybody walked away early, they walked away thinking, oh, I guess those religious teachers were right. Jesus is a fraud. Right? These 9 disciples are really bringing a blight on the ministry of Jesus. Anybody who already left is like, oh, I guess they are. It's all a lie. And even the religious leaders, they don't really care if Jesus healed this guy. They're still going home with the story. Oh, they had no power. Those disciples, they couldn't heal him. Right? These disciples really created a problem. So at the end of this passage, they come to Jesus and they say, why could we not cast it out? And he said to them, this kind cannot be driven out by anything but... And here I've got to tell you, there are manuscript variances here. There are some manuscripts that say this kind only comes out through prayer and fasting. A common phrase that happens a lot in Scripture. Prayer and fasting, they go together often. So If that's the correct reading here, this kind only comes out through prayer and fasting, then what Jesus is saying to the 9 is, it's really not your fault. This was a hard one. Don't worry yourself about it. This one took extra, and so it's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. Which is weird because he's calling somebody faithless. He's blaming somebody. In Matthew, they ask, and he says, it's because you have no faith. So, it's the same story. So, we know he is blaming them. He is saying, you messed up. And so, this one only comes out through prayer and fasting. That ending, that's one ending, but it's probably not the original ending. It's probably a copyist error in some manuscripts. What is considered to be by scholarship the most reliable and earliest manuscripts just simply have Jesus saying, this kind only comes out by prayer. That's the only way. Okay? So let's go with that. Because we already know Jesus does say, you faithless generation, and Matthew tells us he's specifically talking to the disciples. Why didn't it come out? Because you have no faith. That's what he said. You're faithless. So let's read it this way. They come and say, why couldn't we do it? And Jesus said, well, this one only comes out with prayer. I don't know about you. That's a punch in the face to me. It begs a question. It just begs a question. Last week, we had someone in Bible class talk about a medical problem that was giving her grief. It was a lot of information and none of it good, and a lot of procedures that take a long time over the course of 3 weeks. Just a lot of not good information in these medical tests. And she wanted prayer. So we gathered around her and we all put our hands on her and we prayed over her. On Wednesday night, she let us know things are way better. They're not like that at all. They're really not bad. She had peace. Things were awesome. And we thank God. But I don't know what we'd have done if we didn't pray. What are these disciples doing? What did they do? What else is there to do? The guy, he's got this condition and it's horrible, and they're like, let me help. And then what? You tell me, I don't know. If they weren't praying, what were they doing? I don't understand. I hear people, probably over the last several decades now, I guess, other people don't pray. What do? They send you good feelings. I mean, that's nice. I don't know what that is. I'm sending you good vibes. Thank you. I like good vibes, I guess. I don't know what that is. I'm not being mean. Always be good vibes. I'm all for good vibes. I just don't know. I don't know what that's going to do. Send me all the good vibes you want, but I don't know. This guy needs more than good vibes. This guy needed something powerful to change whatever was going on in him. And can you think of something? I mean, can anybody? Can you think of what they might have been doing if it wasn't praying? I think it's supposed to smack us in the face. We're supposed to say, what in the world is going on here? So I'm going to expound on this a little bit, just so we have an idea who these disciples are behind the curtain. I'll take a little liberty here, filling in the blanks. Okay? Because, let me say this. Did I put it in here? Yeah, let's look at this scripture. Look at this scripture. Right after this huge debacle, this huge mega failure where these disciples don't help the guy and they prove the religious establishment right. And maybe some people went home thinking, they went home too early. Yeah, those guys are frauds. After that event, they left Caesarea Philippi and they came to Capernaum, and he was in the house and he asked them, what were you discussing on the way? But they kept silent, for on the way They had argued with one another about what? I missed it. What happened that would give anybody the cause to argue about who's greatest here? It was just a huge fail. And they're arguing about who's greatest? That's what I think we got to figure out. How in the world did they get there? And this is what I think. When Jesus chose 3 to go up at the beginning of this chapter, he chose Peter, James, and John to go up. I see Mary's nodding with me. She's with me. She knows how guys are, right? She knows how the boys act. When he chose 3 to go up with him, what were those 3 thinking about themselves? In a culture of where they argue about who's greatest, what were those 3 thinking? I told you. Yeah. And what were the other 9 thinking? But I'll tell you what else they were thinking. If it had chose 4, it'd have been me. Right? There was a study I remember when little boys they're on the playground and they're asked, and if one of them says to the other, my uncle has a horse. Guess what the other one's going to say? Rusty's got it. Well, my uncle has 2 horses. That's what guys do. Girls didn't do that. When the girls were like, my mom likes to bake. My mom bakes a good cake. The other one doesn't say, oh yeah, well my mom bakes 10 good cakes. The guys do that, but the girls don't. They go, oh, she does? Oh, I'll bet those are good. My mom bakes a cake too. Hey, we should have cakes someday together. It's different. This is real. I remember these psychological studies from a long time ago. It's real. That's what these guys are doing. These guys are like, the 3 that are going up are like, that's right. We're the best. And the 9 that are back there, they're like, and then think about this dynamic. All of them had success up until this point, casting out evil spirits. All of them. But when the 3 come down and the 9 and they're all together again, 9 of them have failed. 3 of them have not failed. Think about that conversation. Well, if we'd have been there. I mean, you guys, you failed, but I've never failed. If I'd have been there, I'd have helped them. I don't know what's wrong with you guys. Am I stretching this? I don't think so. This is the dynamic. One more piece of that. 9 guys failed to help this poor kid, this poor young man. One guy, just a couple days ago, was called Satan. That leaves 2. Which 2? James and John. Just in about a chapter, these 2 are going to go to Jesus or have their mom go or both and say, you know what, Jesus? We think we should be on your right and left. We want the best seats. You think that's a coincidence that they think they're the best? There's 12 of them. 2 have always been successful healing and weren't part of that debacle. 1 was called Satan and 9 failed. 2 are the greatest. And hey, Jesus, when we get to Jerusalem, we'd like to sit on your right and left. That's who we're talking about here. This pig pen. These are pig pen disciples. It may even get worse than that. Once we understand this dynamic, and we get into the scene, and we've got the 9 disciples, and we've got this Gentile. And I haven't been able to answer this question, why they didn't pray for him. That's a tough one. I don't know what else they were doing, but why didn't they pray? Maybe it was just because they were like, oh, we can do it. We can do it. But you'd think after 6 or 7 guys failed, somebody would think to ask God. Somebody would say, let's bring him to God. Maybe God will help him. Especially after all the others failed. So I'm really struggling with this. I don't know. I don't know if that's right. It could be. Maybe that's why, because they just thought, oh, I'll do it myself. You just think after a while they would think differently and try God. And so I have this other thought, and it's horrible. Well, I'm going to throw it out because it fits. It's not gospel. It's just the vibe I'm getting. We know from Matthew when the disciples were up there in the area that Elijah went of Zarephath to help that woman, and where Jesus brought them to help that woman, we know from Matthew's gospel, the same story, we know that those disciples would not bring a Gentile to Jesus. Don't we? It's just true. These disciples would not bring a Gentile to Jesus. They over and over, they're like, no, and she's pestering them. I got to see Jesus. I got to see Jesus. No, no, no. The only time they bring her is not for Jesus to help. They bring her when they finally say, Jesus, could you deal with this lady? Because she's driving us nuts. I've said it before. When they're in the Jewish communities, they're bringing everybody to Jesus. But when they're up there with the Gentile, they won't bring her to Jesus. They don't think she's worthy of his help. They don't want him to help her. Now they just want him to get rid of her. And so, I mean, I could be wrong about this. But what if these 9 disciples despise Gentiles so much, and we already know they do, despise Gentiles so much that they might still believe God doesn't want to hear about this Gentile. Now that may seem far-fetched, but I don't know what else to do here. If you can think of a reason why these guys would not pray, come and tell me. I don't know. And so I'm trying to, my mind likes to figure out puzzles. I'm trying to figure out what in the world were they doing if they weren't praying? And if they weren't praying, why? And I think it's still just part of this misunderstanding that God is not coming to help Gentiles. He's coming to destroy them, to kick them out, to save Jews. That's all I can think of. But that's not the point of why I told you all that stuff. I'm trying to describe them like them because I think a lot of us are like them in one way or another, to one extent or another. We're just like that. And where do we see Jesus? He doesn't kick them out of class. He doesn't expel them from school. He continues his master class. He just continues. Unlimited patience. He just continues with them. He continues with them saying, well, who's the greatest? And we want to be on your right and left. And they keep it up. And all the way through the Gospels, they're just like this. But he remains. And they're still in his class. He's still showing up to teach them. He's that patient. And so if you ever feel like a pig pen in God's sight, just know he is patient. He's chosen you. You've put your trust in him. He's not letting go. He's for you. He's not against you. If you don't know God like that, we'd love to just talk to you more about it. Have Bible study with you, whatever we can do to try to get you to know how God loves you, how patient he is with you, how forgiving he is, that his whole hope is he can help you overcome your unbelief and trust in him more. That's what he wants for you. If you don't have that, let somebody know. We'd love to help you on that journey. If there's any way we can serve you this morning, we're going to have a time. We're going to sing a song, and you're welcome to come as we stand and sing.